Olivia clutched her stomach as another wave of pain shot through her body. She'd been dealing with this for 3 days now, each day worse than the last. Her husband Anthony paced the emergency room waiting area, glancing at the clock every few minutes. They had been waiting for almost 2 hours. "Maybe we should ask again," Anthony suggested, looking at the reception desk where a tired nurse was typing away. "They said they'd call me when it's my turn," Olivia whispered, not wanting to cause trouble. But the pain was becoming unbearable. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air conditioning. Anthony nodded, but his worry was clear. He had never seen his wife in such pain before. They had been married for 6 years, and Olivia was usually the strong one, the one who rarely complained even when sick. But last night, he had found her curled up on the bathroom floor, crying. "Number 47, called a voice from the front desk. "That's us." Anthony helped Olivia to her feet, supporting her as they walked to the triage area. The nurse looked up briefly as they approached. "Follow me," she said, leading them to a small examination room. "The doctor will be with you shortly." Shortly turned into another 45 minutes. By then, Olivia was lying on her side, tears streaming silently down her face. Anthony had asked twice if anyone was coming, only to be told the doctor was on his way. When Dr. Richards finally entered, he barely looked up from his clipboard. "What seems to be the problem today?" he asked, his tone suggesting this was just another routine visit. "My wife has been having severe abdominal pain for 3 days, Anthony explained. "It's getting worse, not better." Dr. Richards glanced at Olivia, then back at his notes. "Says here she rates it as an 8 out of 10. "It's a 9 now," Olivia managed to say. The doctor finally approached her. "Sit up, please." His examination was quick, his hands pressing against her abdomen without much care. Olivia winced. "Tenderness is normal with menstrual cramps." "This isn't normal period pain," Anthony interjected. "She's never experienced anything like this before." "I see." Dr. Richards stepped back. "And are you a medical professional, sir?" Anthony felt his face grow hot. "No, but I know my wife." The doctor turned back to Olivia. "Any chance you could be pregnant?" "No," she replied. "Are you sexually active?" "Yes, with my husband." "Any history of STDs?" Olivia shook her head, embarrassment adding to her discomfort. "Well," Dr. Richards said, making a note, "some women do experience severe cramping. Have you tried over-the-counter pain relievers? Hot water bottles?" "Yes, nothing's helping," Olivia said, her voice strained. The doctor nodded absently. "I'm going to prescribe you some stronger pain medication. Take it with food, and if the pain persists for more than another day or two, follow up with your regular doctor." Anthony stepped forward. "Shouldn't you run some tests? Blood work or maybe an ultrasound?" Dr. Richards sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. "Sir, the emergency room is for emergencies. What your wife is experiencing, while uncomfortable, is not life-threatening. Women's bodies are designed to handle this kind of discomfort." Anthony noticed how the doctor's eyes never fully met Olivia's, how he spoke about her rather than to her. Something cold settled in his stomach. "But she can barely walk," Anthony insisted. "She hasn't been able to eat or sleep. As I said, the medication will help. The pain receptors in some people are more sensitive." There was something in the way he said it, a slight curl of his lip that made Anthony's fists clench. "You mean black women?" Anthony said quietly. Dr. Richards looked startled. "Excuse me? Is that what you're implying? That my wife is being overly sensitive because she's black?" The doctor's face hardened. "I didn't say anything about race. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm simply making a clinical judgment based on her symptoms." "A judgment you made in less than 5 minutes without any tests," Anthony pointed out. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I know the difference between an emergency and someone seeking pain medication." Olivia made a small sound, a mixture of pain and humiliation. Anthony helped her sit up. "We're leaving," he told the doctor, "and we're going to find someone who will actually help her." Dr. Richards shrugged. "That's your prerogative. The prescription will be sent to your pharmacy." He turned and left without another word. In the car, Olivia broke down. "Maybe I am overreacting," she sobbed. "Maybe it's just bad cramps." Anthony took her hand. "No. I know you, and I know you don't complain unless something is really wrong. We're going to another hospital." The drive to the next nearest emergency room took 30 minutes. By then, Olivia was barely conscious, her skin clammy and pale. Anthony carried her in, his heart pounding with fear. This time, a doctor named Dr. Chen took one look at Olivia and immediately ordered blood tests and an ultrasound. Within an hour, they had an answer. Olivia had a ruptured ovarian cyst that was causing internal bleeding. She needed emergency surgery. "If you had waited much longer," Dr. Chen told them as they prepped Olivia for the operating room, "this could have been fatal." Anthony felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief that someone had finally listened, that Olivia would get the care she needed. Rage that the first doctor had dismissed her pain so easily, had almost sent her home with a condition that could have killed her. As they wheeled Olivia away, she squeezed his hand weakly. "Thank you for not giving up," she whispered. Anthony watched her go, then pulled out his phone. He wasn't just going to let this slide. Dr. Richards needed to understand the consequences of his actions, or rather, his inaction. People like him couldn't be allowed to continue treating patients this way, especially patients of color whose pain was so often ignored or minimized. He started by writing down everything he could remember about their interaction with Dr. Richards. Times, exact words used, the dismissive attitude. Then he looked up the hospital's patient advocacy office. This was just the beginning. He would make sure that what happened to Olivia wouldn't happen to someone else. Because sometimes, fighting for the ones you love means standing up against a system that doesn't always see them as worthy of care, and Anthony was prepared to fight with everything he had. Anthony sat in the waiting room, his leg bouncing nervously as he waited for news about Olivia's surgery. The minutes stretched into hours, each one filled with a mixture of worry and anger. He couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Richards and how easily he had dismissed Olivia's pain. A nurse approached him, her expression kind. "Mr. Taylor, your wife is out of surgery. Everything went well." Anthony let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Can I see her?" "She's in recovery now. The doctor will come talk to you soon, and then you can see her." 20 minutes. Later, Dr. Chen appeared, still in her surgical scrubs. She sat down next to Anthony. "Your wife is stable," she began. "The cyst had ruptured and was causing significant internal bleeding. We were able to control the bleeding and remove the cyst. She's going to need some time to recover, but she should be fine." "Thank you," Anthony said, his voice thick with emotion. If we had listened to the first doctor, Dr. Chen's expression darkened slightly. "You mentioned that another doctor sent you home. Do you mind if I ask which hospital that was?" Anthony told her about their experience with Dr. Richards. As he spoke, he noticed Dr. Chen's jaw tightening. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is not uncommon," she said once he finished. "There's a well-documented issue in healthcare where pain, especially women's pain and particularly women of color, is not taken as seriously. So what can I do about it?" Anthony asked. "Document everything. File a formal complaint with the hospital. If you feel strongly about it, there are patient advocacy groups that can help you navigate the process." After Dr. Chen left, Anthony was allowed to see Olivia. She was pale and groggy from the anesthesia, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Hey you," she whispered. "Hey yourself," he said, taking her hand gently. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. But the pain is different now. Surgical pain, not that awful internal pain." Anthony nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They said the surgery went well. You're going to be okay." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "What if you hadn't insisted on coming to another hospital? What if I had just taken those pain meds and gone home?" The thought made Anthony's stomach churn. "But I did, and you didn't. You're safe now." "Because of you," she said. "You stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself." Anthony stayed, with her until she fell asleep again, then stepped out into the hallway to make some calls. First to their families, letting them know what had happened. Then to his boss, explaining that he would need a few days off to care for Olivia. Finally, he made one more call to the patient relations department at the first hospital. "I want to file a formal complaint against Dr. Richards," he told the representative who answered. "He nearly cost my wife her life today." The woman on the phone sounded sympathetic but practiced. "I'm sorry to hear about your experience, sir. I can send you the forms to fill out." "No," Anthony interrupted. "I don't want forms. I want to speak to someone in person. Tomorrow." There was a pause. "Sir, the process typically—" "My wife almost died because one of your doctors couldn't be bothered to take her seriously. I'm not interested in your typical process. I'll be there tomorrow at 9 a.m., and I expect someone to meet with me." After hanging up, Anthony leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had kept him going was wearing off, leaving him drained. But he wasn't done. This was just the beginning. The next morning, after making sure Olivia was comfortable and her mother had arrived to sit with her, Anthony drove back to the first hospital. He had spent part of the night researching medical bias and patient rights, arming himself with information. At the administration office, he was met by a woman who introduced herself as Ms. Harper, the patient relations manager. "Mr. Taylor, I understand you had a concerning experience yesterday," she began, ushering him into a small conference room. "Concerning doesn't begin to cover it," Anthony replied. He recounted their experience with Dr. Richards in detail, including the dismissive attitude and the lack of proper examination or testing. Ms. Harper took notes, her expression carefully neutral. "I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We take patient complaints very seriously." "This isn't just a complaint," Anthony interrupted. "My wife could have died. The second hospital confirmed she had internal bleeding from a ruptured cyst. Dr. Richards didn't even order basic tests." "I understand your frustration." "Do you?" Anthony leaned forward. "Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand what it's like to watch someone you love in agony, begging for help, only to be treated like they're exaggerating or drug-seeking. I don't think you understand what it's like to realize that if I hadn't insisted on going to another hospital, I might be planning my wife's funeral right now." Ms. Harper had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Mr. Taylor, I assure you that we will investigate this matter thoroughly. Dr. Richards will be spoken to." "That's not enough," Anthony said firmly. "I want a formal review of his pattern of care, especially with patients of color. I want documentation of any previous complaints, and I want to know exactly what actions will be taken to prevent this from happening to someone else. Those records would be confidential. Then I'll go to the medical board and the media. Because this isn't just about Olivia anymore. It's about every patient who comes through those doors and deserves to be treated with dignity and proper care." There was a tense silence. Then Ms. Harper sighed. "Let me bring in our chief medical officer. This is clearly a serious situation that warrants immediate attention." While she was gone, Anthony checked his phone. There was a text from Olivia's mom saying she was awake and asking for him. He texted back that he would return soon. The door opened, and Ms. Harper returned with an older man who introduced himself as Dr. Thompson, the chief medical officer. "Mr. Taylor, I've been briefed on the situation. First, let me say how sorry I am about your wife's experience. That is not the standard of care we expect at this hospital." Anthony nodded but remained silent. "I've already pulled Dr. Richards from the schedule today so we can begin a review immediately. I'd like to get more details from you about what happened, if you're willing." For the next hour, Anthony went through the entire experience again, answering Dr. Thompson's questions and providing the name of the doctor who had treated Olivia at the second hospital. "We'll be contacting Dr. Chen for her assessment as well," Dr. Thompson assured him. "And I want you to know that we take allegations of bias very seriously. We have policies in place, but clearly we need to evaluate whether they're being properly implemented." "I don't want just an evaluation," Anthony said. "I want action, real, concrete changes." Dr. Thompson met his gaze. "So do I, Mr. Taylor. So do I. As Anthony left the hospital, he felt a small sense of accomplishment. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was a start. He drove back to Olivia, determined to be by her side as she recovered, and once she was stronger, they would continue this fight together. Because some battles weren't just personal, they were necessary for changing a system that had failed too many people for too long. 2 weeks after Olivia's surgery, Anthony sat at their kitchen table surrounded by papers, medical records, hospital policies, studies on healthcare disparities, and notes from the numerous phone calls he'd made. Olivia walked in slowly, still moving carefully but looking better each day. "You're building quite the case there," she said, easing herself into a chair beside him. Anthony looked up with a tired smile, just trying to make sense of it all. Olivia picked up one of the articles. "Racial disparities in pain assessment and treatment. I've been reading about this too." She paused. "You know, before this happened, I always thought maybe I was just being sensitive when doctors didn't seem to take me seriously." "You weren't," Anthony said firmly. "And you're not the only one. Look at this." He pushed forward a study. Black patients are systematically undertreated for pain compared to white patients. Some doctors still believe myths about biological differences, like black people having thicker skin or less sensitive nerve endings. Olivia shook her head in disbelief. "In 2025? That's medieval thinking." "But it persists," Anthony said, "and it nearly cost you your life." The hospital had called twice since Anthony's meeting with Dr. Thompson. The first call was to inform them that Dr. Richards had been placed on administrative leave pending a review. The second was to schedule a meeting with the hospital board to discuss systemic improvements. "Do you think anything will really change?" Olivia asked. Anthony covered her hand with his. "I don't know, but I'm sure as hell going to try to make it happen." That afternoon, they received an unexpected visitor. Lisa Chen, a reporter from the local newspaper, had somehow heard about their story and wanted to interview them. "I've been working on a series about healthcare inequities," Lisa explained as she sat in their living room. "Your experience, unfortunately, fits a pattern I've been documenting." Olivia and Anthony exchanged a look. "We are not looking to become the center of a media circus," Olivia said cautiously. "I understand," Lisa replied. "But stories like yours put a human face on statistics. They make people pay attention in a way that numbers alone never will." After some discussion, they agreed to the interview on the condition that the focus would be on the broader issue, not just their personal ordeal. As Lisa was leaving, she turned back. "There's something else you might be interested in. There's a town hall meeting next week about healthcare access and quality in underserved communities. The hospital administration will be there, along with local health officials. It might be a good platform." The town hall was held in a community center, not far from their home. The room was packed with people standing along the walls. At the front, a panel of hospital administrators, including Dr. Thompson, sat alongside city health officials and community advocates. Anthony and Olivia arrived early, finding seats near the front. As they waited for the meeting to begin, Olivia squeezed Anthony's hand. "Are you sure you want to speak?" she asked. Public speaking had never been his thing. "No," he admitted, "but I need to." The meeting began with presentations about hospital initiatives and community health programs. Then came the public comment period. Anthony was the third person called to the microphone. He stood, heart pounding, and walked to the front of the room. Taking a deep breath, he began. 2 weeks ago, my wife nearly died because a doctor at City Memorial Hospital didn't take her pain seriously." His voice, though quiet, carried through the silent room. "She was dismissed without proper examination, without basic tests that would have shown she was bleeding internally. The only reason she's alive today is because we went to another hospital, where a different doctor actually listened to her." He looked directly at Dr. Thompson. "Since then, I've learned that what happened to my wife isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern where certain patients, often women, often people of color, have their pain dismissed and their concerns ignored." Anthony pulled out a folder. I've collected testimonies from 23 other patients who had similar experiences at City Memorial. 23 people who were told they were exaggerating, who were denied tests, who were sent home only to return later with worsened conditions. And those are just the ones I found through social media in 2 weeks. A murmur went through the crowd. Dr. Thompson's face had gone pale. I'm not here to vilify individual doctors, though some certainly deserve scrutiny, Anthony continued. I'm here because the problem is bigger than any one person. It's systemic. It's in the training, in the policies, in the biases that go unchallenged. He laid out specific proposals: mandatory bias training for all medical staff, regular audits of treatment patterns by race and gender, a transparent complaint process with actual consequences, community oversight of hospital policies, and diversity in hospital leadership. These aren't radical ideas, he concluded. They're the bare minimum needed to ensure that everyone who walks through your doors receives the care they deserve. Because my wife deserved better. Everyone does. As Anthony returned to his seat, the room erupted in applause. Several people stood, including a woman who called out, "My daughter had the same experience last year." Dr. Thompson approached the microphone next. "Mr. Taylor raises important concerns," he began, his tone measured. "While I can't comment on specific cases, I want to assure everyone that we are committed to addressing these issues. In fact, we've already begun implementing some of the suggestions Mr. Taylor mentioned." "Because you got caught," someone in the audience shouted. Dr. Thompson's professional veneer cracked slightly. "Because it's the right thing to do," he insisted. "And because we recognize that trust once broken is difficult to rebuild. We're prepared to do the work." After the meeting, several people approached Anthony and Olivia to share their own stories. A community organizer invited them to join a newly forming patient advocacy group. Lisa, the reporter, was taking notes furiously. "You did good," Olivia told Anthony as they walked to their car. "Really good. We're just getting started," he replied. The next day, Anthony received a call from Dr. Thompson's office. The hospital board wanted to meet with them as soon as possible. "They're scared," Olivia said when he told her about the call. "Good. They should be." The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Over the weekend, Anthony and Olivia prepared, refining their demands and gathering more evidence. They also met with 3 other families who had experienced similar discrimination at the hospital. By the time Monday arrived, their story had made the front page of the local newspaper, complete with quotes from medical ethics experts and statistics on healthcare disparities. The online version had gone viral, with thousands of comments from people sharing their own experiences. As they walked into the hospital boardroom, Anthony felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about one bad doctor or one bad experience anymore. It was about changing a system that had failed too many people for too long, and sometimes change began with one voice refusing to be silenced, refusing to let someone they loved be dismissed and devalued. That voice was his, but it was increasingly becoming part of a chorus demanding to be heard, demanding better, demanding what everyone deserved, care that was thorough, respectful, and equal. The boardroom fell silent as they entered. 8 people sat around a large table, expressions ranging from concerned to defensive. Dr. Thompson stood to greet them. "Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, thank you for coming. We have a lot to discuss." Anthony nodded, placing his folder on the table. "Yes," he agreed, "we certainly do." The hospital boardroom was elegant but sterile, with its polished table and high-backed chairs. 8 board members sat across from Anthony and Olivia, their expressions carefully neutral. Dr. Thompson sat at the head of the table, flanked by the hospital's legal counsel and the head of public relations. "Before we begin," the PR director said, sliding folders toward them, "we want you to know that we take your concerns very seriously. We've prepared a comprehensive response plan." "I'm sure you have," Anthony interrupted, leaving the folder untouched. "But I'd like to hear what actions you've actually taken regarding Dr. Richards first." There was an uncomfortable pause. Dr. Thompson cleared his throat. "As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Richards has been placed on administrative leave while we conduct an internal review. We've interviewed staff who have worked with him and are reviewing his patient records. And what have you found? Olivia asked. Another uncomfortable silence. The review is ongoing, the legal counsel interjected smoothly. But we can tell you that we've identified some concerning patterns that warrant further investigation. Anthony leaned forward. Let me guess, dismissing women's pain? Treating patients of color differently than white patients? Minimal testing for certain demographics? The lawyer's expression tightened, but Dr. Thompson nodded slowly. Yes, there appear to be some disparities in his approach to care. We're taking this very seriously. As you should, Olivia said quietly, because it nearly killed me. One of the board members, an older woman who had been watching intently, spoke up. Mrs. Taylor, can you tell us exactly what happened that day? In your own words. For the next 15 minutes, Olivia recounted her experience, from the initial pain to the dismissive treatment to the emergency surgery at the second hospital. She spoke calmly, but didn't soften the reality. How scared she had been, how humiliated she felt when Dr. Richards implied she was overreacting, how she had begun to doubt herself. The worst part, she concluded, is that I started to believe him. I've been conditioned to think that maybe my pain isn't that bad. Maybe I should just tough it out. If my husband hadn't insisted we go elsewhere, I might have died believing I was just being dramatic. The room was silent when she finished. The older board member, her nameplate read Dr. Patricia Winters, looked visibly moved. Thank you for sharing that, she said. As a black woman physician, I've seen this from both sides. I've had my own pain dismissed, and I've witnessed colleagues treat patients differently based on race, gender, or both. It's pervasive and dangerous. She turned to her fellow board members. This isn't just about one doctor. This is about our entire system. Anthony nodded appreciatively at Dr. Winters before addressing the room. Which is why the action plan in that folder better be about more than just Dr. Richards. The PR director looked uncomfortable. We've outlined several initiatives, including bias training for all staff, a review of our triage protocols, and training isn't enough, Anthony said firmly. You need accountability. Real consequences for physicians who show patterns of bias. Transparent reporting of treatment outcomes by race and gender. And you need diverse leadership at every level. He nodded toward Dr. Winters. No offense to Dr. Winters, but one black woman on a board of 9 isn't diversity. Rather than looking offended, Dr. Winters actually smiled. He's right, she told her colleagues. I've been saying this for years. The hospital's legal counsel leaned forward. Mr. Taylor, while we appreciate your suggestions, implementing such wide-ranging changes takes time and careful consideration. People are dying while you carefully consider, Olivia cut in. I almost died. And let's be honest, Anthony added. You're moving now because our story went public. How many complaints did you ignore before that? How many patients suffered in silence? The PR director tried another approach. We understand your frustration. Perhaps we could discuss some kind of settlement. No, both Anthony and Olivia said simultaneously. We're not here for money, Anthony continued. We're here for change, real, measurable, permanent change. And if we don't see it, Olivia added, the article in the local paper will be just the beginning. National media has already reached out to us. This clearly wasn't news the board wanted to hear. The legal counsel whispered something to Dr. Thompson, who nodded grimly. What exactly do you want from us, he asked. Anthony opened his own folder and slid a document across the table. This is our proposal. It includes everything I mentioned, plus a community oversight committee with actual authority, mandatory second opinions for any patient who requests one, and public reporting of complaint resolutions. This is extensive, the legal counsel said, scanning the document. So was my wife's surgery, Anthony replied evenly. The meeting continued for another hour, with board members raising concerns about costs, implementation timelines, and legal implications. Anthony and Olivia held firm. By the end, it was clear that neither side was fully satisfied, but progress had been made. We'll need time to review this in detail, Dr. Thompson said, holding up the proposal. But speaking for myself, I believe, these are changes that are long overdue. I'm committed to making them happen. Dr. Winters nodded firmly. As am I, and I'll be watching to make sure we follow through. As they left the meeting, Anthony felt cautiously optimistic. But he knew this was just one battle in a much longer war. Their story continued to spread. The local article had been picked up by larger outlets, and by the end of the week, a national morning show had invited them to share their experience. Social media was buzzing with the hashtag #BelieveMyPain, as thousands of people shared their own stories of medical dismissal and bias. The morning of their television appearance, Olivia sat at her vanity, applying makeup. Her hands were steady, but Anthony could see the nervousness in her eyes. "We don't have to do this," he reminded her. "We can cancel." She shook her head. "No, we need to do this, not just for us, but for everyone who's been through something similar and didn't have a voice." The TV studio was intimidating, with its bright lights and bustling crew. The host, a well-known journalist named Rebecca Walsh, greeted them warmly. "Thank you both for coming on today," she said during a commercial break. "This is an important story that needs to be told." When the cameras rolled, Rebecca introduced them and briefly outlined what had happened. Then she turned to Olivia. "Can you tell us about your experience at the first hospital?" Olivia took a deep breath and began her story again. This time she was speaking not just to a boardroom, but to millions of viewers across the country. She described the pain, the dismissal, the fear. She spoke about how it felt to have her concerns waved away, to be treated as if she was exaggerating. "The message was clear," she said. "My pain didn't matter. I didn't matter." Rebecca turned to Anthony. "And you advocated for your wife. You insisted on going to another hospital." Anthony nodded. "I knew something was seriously wrong. The doctor spent maybe 5 minutes with her, didn't run any tests, and basically told us to go home and take some Tylenol. At the second hospital, they took one look at her and rushed her into testing. She was in surgery within an hour. For a ruptured ovarian cyst that was causing internal bleeding," Rebecca clarified. "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "The doctor at the second hospital said if we'd waited much longer, it could have been fatal." Rebecca's expression was grave. "This isn't just your story, is it? Since you've gone public, what kind of response have you received?" "Overwhelming," Anthony said. "Thousands of comments, emails, messages from people who've experienced similar treatment. Particularly women, particularly people of color. It's a systemic issue." "And what's being done about it? Has the hospital responded?" Anthony explained. About the meeting with the board, the proposals they had submitted, Dr. Richards being placed on leave. "It's a start," Olivia said. "But it's not enough, not nearly enough." "What would be enough?" Rebecca asked. Olivia thought for a moment. "Real change, not just at one hospital, but everywhere. Medical schools need to address bias in their training. Hospitals need diverse leadership and real accountability. And patients need to know they have the right to advocate for themselves, to demand proper care." As the segment ended, Rebecca thanked them for their courage in speaking out. Off camera, she squeezed Olivia's hand. "My sister went through something similar last year," she confided. "You're doing important work." By the time they returned home, their phones were buzzing with notifications. More media requests, messages of support, and perhaps most surprisingly, an email from the state medical board requesting a meeting. "It's happening," Anthony said, showing Olivia the email. "People are listening." Olivia leaned against him, both exhausted and energized. "This is bigger than us now, isn't it?" Anthony nodded, holding her close. "It always was. We just had to make people see it." 6 months later, Anthony stood at the back of a crowded conference room at City Memorial Hospital. A banner hung across the front wall. Community Health Equity Initiative, 1-year action plan. Olivia was at the podium, addressing the diverse crowd of medical professionals, community members, and media representatives. "When I came to this hospital in pain 6 months ago, I was dismissed and nearly died as a result," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today I stand here not as a victim, but as a partner in change." So much had happened in those 6 months. Their television appearance had sparked a national conversation. Medical journals published articles about bias in pain management. Congressional hearings were held on healthcare disparities, and at City Memorial, real change was finally taking shape. Dr. Richards had been terminated after the hospital's investigation revealed a clear pattern of discriminatory care. More importantly, the hospital had implemented most of the reforms Anthony and Olivia had proposed, with Dr. Winters leading the effort as the newly appointed Chief of Equity and Patient Advocacy. This initiative isn't just about new policies on paper, Olivia continued. It's about changing the culture of medicine. It's about ensuring that every patient who walks through these doors is seen, heard, and properly treated, regardless of their race, gender, or background. Anthony watched his wife with pride. In the past months, she had transformed her trauma into purpose, becoming a powerful advocate not just for herself, but for countless others. She had testified before state health committees, spoken at medical schools, and helped establish a patient advocacy group that was already expanding to other cities. As Olivia spoke, Anthony reflected on their journey. There had been difficult moments, hate mail accusing them of playing the race card, social media trolls, even threats. There had been setbacks when promised changes moved too slowly or were watered down in implementation. But there had also been victories, both large and small. Like the elderly black woman who approached them after a community meeting to say that, for the first time in her life, her doctor had really listened to her. Or the medical student who told Olivia that her story had changed how he would practice medicine. Today we're unveiling several concrete initiatives, Olivia was saying. First, a new triage protocol that includes mandatory testing for patients reporting severe pain. Second, a diverse patient advisory board with real authority to review complaints and recommend action. Third, quarterly public reporting of treatment patterns by demographic groups to identify and address disparities. She gestured to Dr. Winters, who stood nearby. And perhaps most importantly, a comprehensive bias training program for all staff, not a one-time seminar, but an ongoing process of education, self-reflection, and accountability. Dr. Winters stepped forward to explain the training in more detail. As she spoke, Anthony noticed Dr. Thompson watching from the side, his expression thoughtful. The hospital administrator had been skeptical at first, concerned about costs and liability, but over time he had become a genuine ally, sometimes pushing for changes even before Anthony and Olivia raised them. After the presentations, during the reception, Dr. Thompson approached Anthony. "Your wife is quite the speaker," he said, watching, as Olivia chatted with a group of nurses across the room. "She always was," Anthony replied. "She just needed people to listen." Dr. Thompson nodded, looking reflective. "You know, when all this started, I saw it as a PR crisis to manage. Now I see it was actually an opportunity, a painful, necessary opportunity to become better." "That's what matters in the end," Anthony said. "Not who gets credit, but that patients get better care." As the event wound down, a young black woman approached Anthony. She seemed nervous. "Mr. Taylor, I just wanted to thank you and your wife." She twisted her hands together. "I saw your story on TV a few months ago. Last month I had severe stomach pain, and because of what you said, I knew to insist on tests when the doctor tried to send me home." "What happened?" Anthony asked. "Appendicitis," she said. "If I'd gone home like he suggested." She didn't need to finish the sentence. These moments made everything worthwhile. The stress, the public scrutiny, the endless meetings. Every person who learned to advocate for themselves. Every healthcare provider who reconsidered their approach. Every life potentially saved. Later that evening, Anthony and Olivia sat on their porch swing watching the sunset. It had become their ritual, a quiet moment to decompress and connect after busy days. "Do you think we've made a difference?" Olivia asked, resting her head on his shoulder. Anthony thought about the young woman at the reception, about Dr. Winters's new position, about the changes they could see taking shape. "I know we have," he said. "It's not everything we wanted, not yet. But it's a start." I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't stood up for me that day, Olivia said softly. If you had just accepted what Dr. Richards said. Anthony shook his head. That was never an option, not when it comes to you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, until Olivia spoke again. You know what's next, right? Anthony groaned playfully. Don't tell me. More speaking engagements? She laughed. Well, yes, but that's not what I meant. The state medical board meeting next week. They're reviewing their guidelines for pain management and diagnostic protocols. They want us both to testify. Of course they do, Anthony said, with a smile. Changing one hospital isn't enough for you, is it? Not when we can change the whole system, Olivia replied, her eyes bright with purpose. And that was the thing about standing up against injustice. Once you started, it was hard to stop. What had begun as one husband refusing to let his wife's pain be dismissed had grown into something much larger, a movement that was slowly but surely transforming how medicine was practiced. The following week, as they prepared for the medical board meeting, Anthony received an unexpected email. It was from a medical school professor who had been following their story. She wanted to know if they would be willing to speak to her students about their experience and the importance of listening to patients. Another speaking engagement to add to the calendar, Anthony told Olivia with a smile. It's worth it, she replied. Every student who hears our story is a future doctor who might remember it when a patient comes to them in pain. And that was the heart of it, creating ripples of change that would continue long after their story faded from the headlines. Because in the end, it wasn't just about one doctor who had failed them or one hospital that needed reform. It was about building a healthcare system where everyone's pain mattered, where everyone received the care they deserved. As Anthony responded to the professor's email, agreeing to speak to her class, he thought about how their personal tragedy had transformed into a mission. It wasn't what they had chosen, but it was where they had landed. Advocates, educators, catalysts for change. Ready for the next chapter? Olivia asked, joining him at the computer. Anthony took her hand. As long as we're writing it together. Because that was what had started all of this. Love that refused to be silent in the face of injustice. Love that demanded better, that fought for what was right. Love that, in its own way, was helping to heal a broken system. It wasn't the journey they had planned, but it was one that mattered. And they would continue. One story, one policy, one changed mind at a time. Until the day when no one's pain would be dismissed because of who they were or what they looked like. Until the day when healthcare truly meant care for all.